more. I was, anyway, what happened is with all this commotion going on, I figure out what the problem is. And I look over at my dad as he is with all of his might, like a football player trying to push one of those heavy padded things, pushing that door closed, and it is like barely moving. He finally gets it to about 2 inches closed, and I was like, oh, and I switched it to manual, so he was able to close it. And he's like, see, I told you I could do it. And he was just belittling my Tia, my oldest daughter, and just going, I know what to do. I'm the adult here, and just being so awful to her. And it's actually damaged his relationship with her because he was so awful to her. And I got in the front door and closed the door, and I looked back at my little daughter, and she's just red-cheeked, and her tears are streaming down her eyes, and she is just so belittled and made to feel like she's stupid, and I just thought this didn't have to happen. If he had just listened to her, and said, Mom can fix this. And he was like, I knew he was going to break the door, Mom. I knew he was going to break the door. And he didn't, luckily, but it was an awful, awful experience. And I have never known my dad to raise his voice or scream or belittle or do those sorts of things. It was just very uncharacteristic of him.
And how has Tia told you how she feels about that relationship?
She does not like my dad. She doesn't like him.
Have you noticed any other times where you've seen your dad since this 2016? Have you seen any other times where your dad's raised his voice in anger like he was against his granddaughter?
That was actually the worst. And I will say that my dad and I see eye to eye a lot, so there's not been a lot for us to argue or fight about. So I know my sister Polly alluded to an interaction that she witnessed with my baby sister Jenny, my youngest sister Jenny, in which he got right in her face and said F you, like screamed F you at her, which again, he doesn't talk like that, and he doesn't raise his voice and scream. That was not the old Terry that I knew as a dad.
You had never seen that growing up with him?
No, not at all. He was so patient.
Have you seen or known your dad? Since you brought up your sister, Jenny.
Yes.
And this incident the jury heard about yesterday.
Yes.
You know the family dynamics in your family, correct?
Yes, I do. It's complicated.
Yeah, every family is. There's people that are maybe closer to one another than further away. Is that your perception?
I'm sorry, I missed the last part of your...
So in every family, there's relationships that are closer or maybe some that are further away. Is that your perception?
Yes.
Okay. And how would you characterize your father's, from your own opinion, your father's and Jenny's relationship?
Before the accident or after the accident?
Let's say before, and then we'll ask after.
Okay. My sister, Jenny B, is neurotypical, and she...
a conference at your bar?
Yeah, sure. All right. This appears to be a good time to take our lunch recess, so we will do that at this time, returning at 1:30. Ms. Herath, if you could just remain here for just a moment. Thank you. All right, so Ms. Herath, there's a lot of medical experts in this case,
Okay,
and you're not one of them.
it's true.
And so we want to be careful that your testimony limits itself to what you observed,
Okay,
and maybe opinions that you formed based on those observations.
okay,
But what we don't want you to testify to is a medical diagnosis of Jenny, a mental health diagnosis of Jenny, or I guess describe what you've seen with her in terms of a medical diagnosis or medical terminology. Does that make sense?
We don't want that last one. Is that what you just said, Your Honor?
I think I'm a little
Yes,
confused.
we do not want you to be explaining what you've observed with Jenny in terms of a mental health diagnosis. Like a person with this mental health diagnosis is, I see Jenny doing these things that are like a person with this mental diagnosis.
Okay.
But rather,
Okay.
just what did you see?
Oh, what do you notice about her? Okay.
Well, what have you observed?
Mm-hmm.
And what, and you're certainly,
Was the key word that you didn't want to hear was the neurodiversity?
I think that probably triggered the concern.
Because that's more of a medical terminology?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
It doesn't sound like an everyday observation, though.
You're right.
So-
Okay, I understand.
I could see you translating. If you made an observation about Jenny, and you're using that term to describe that observation, I could see you translating that into everyday words
Okay, I
as to
see.
what you saw and what you observed.
Okay.
But in terms of using a medical sounding name, I guess, or label,
Okay,
that's what we need you to avoid.
okay.
Is counsel okay with that instruction?
Yes, and I just want to make one other statement that's separate from this.
Just a minute, then.
Thanks.
I don't want to conflate the two. Are you okay with that instruction to the witness?
Yes.
Okay.
Your Honor,
Ms.
we're
Bowens?
making copies. My staff has advised me that somehow with the help of I'm not even going to misspeak, except someone has accessed that link that we've been trying to get.
Well, right.
I'm going to hand out copies.
Why don't we do this in chambers? And if you need to put something on the record, we can do that after that.
Sure, and I'm not even prepared to. I've just been advised that that link has been accessed. Not a GoPro link, but the actual link.
It's just that this witness is under the exclusionary rule, and I'd rather not discuss it in front of this witness.
Fair enough. Should we meet at, when do you want to meet?
1:15, would that be enough time?
Sure, in chambers?
Yeah, let's start in chambers. And if you could make me a copy.
Yeah, we're making some copies. I just got handed it.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. And thank you. You're welcome to go take lunch or whatever, but you're still under the exclusionary rule as a witness, not to discuss the case with other witnesses or anybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.